Welcome. I'm Janelle Kolaski, a career mindset coach and actor.
And I'm Amanda Dubois, a self-authenticity and prosperity life coach and actor as well. And we're your co-host of Mindset Artistry YouTube channel,
where we teach you the art of discovering and using your mindset
to build a career and life you desire.
Before we really dive into the topic, I do want to say that I'm specifically talking about like when people hear of like surviving, sometimes people will say, well, like I'm in a really rough spot. If you're genuinely in a really rough spot, maybe there's abusive stuff going on and everything, we're actually going to have a number you can call that we'll have below the podcast and in the YouTube, and reach out for help and find therapists, find friends to get you out of scary situations. But the reason why this topic is so important is actually many people, even after they get out of abusive situations, and it doesn't have to be physical abuse, everybody runs to that. Abuse can be mental, emotional, spiritual. And what will happen is you will be out of the situation and you will be finally in a safe space, but your body will be stuck back there. And so that will affect how you live now. You'll continue to live in the past, even though you're in a completely new spot and actually safe. So that's what I want to talk about today, because a lot of times we will get into these patterns and it's a holding pattern, and it will make it very difficult to reach our goals because we just don't physically feel that it's possible based on whatever you have been through. And so we go into a survival mode constantly, and it makes it impossible to thrive. And a lot of this has to do with the story that you keep telling yourself, and you're getting caught in your mind instead of really going to your body and feeling out how you're truly feeling and working through that so you can actually be in the present moment. But I have a few points to hit today before we really get into that. Amanda, I would love if you could give an example or something where, I don't know, it could be recently or whenever in your life where you caught yourself kind of really living in the past, even though you were safe now in the moment. And it doesn't have to be that you were abused or something. It could have just been something negative that happened, like someone told you you couldn't do something, and now you were still telling yourself, I can't, just because of what was said in the past.
Yeah, so a few situations came up, and I just want to remind everybody that these situations don't have to be so grandiose. It could be moments that have been impacted us and they stained us like a scar, or, so it can be, and everything matters to you because it's your life. So for me, a thing that was big was when I worked in the corporate world, and how I was constantly told or pointed out that I talked funny because of where I grew up. It was very, it was digged at so badly. And I don't know if it was intentional or unintentional to cause harm, or if it was actually to try to make that aware of so that I'm aware of it so that I can work on it. I'm not sure what the person was trying to do at the time, but I didn't take it very well. And that was very ego-based as well. That was very insecure of my background. But, I was told that, I say things funny. And so that's still with me for a really long time. And up until that moment, I didn't pay attention to how I spoke, where I came from. It wasn't a conscious thing that I judged. And after that fact, I started creating these judgments in my mind about how I looked, what I said, how I said it. And it caused a big insecurity within me when I started speaking in public, in corporate scenarios. And then it affected my acting a little bit, to the point that I thought that I needed, speech therapy. And I all these weird and crazy scenarios came in my head where I just didn't feel enough because of my cultural background. And that affected me for a long time, unbeknownst to me too, because I wasn't aware I was doing it. That's the crazy part. I wasn't aware I was doing it until I actually started tapping into, like, why do I stutter in crowds when I want to raise my hand and talk? And that was something I dealt with as a kid, but even more as an adult. And until I sat down and go, where did it come from? Where did it get to the point where it bubbled over, and I really felt the pain and suffering, that I made the correlation that it happened in the corporate world and this person and how it was affecting my world. So it was a story that I was telling myself, and I believed, and on top of that, it was a story someone else was telling me, and I believed their story. And that's why I always say, don't let somebody else's opinion become your reality. And that's why I'm so big on that, because it started becoming my reality and I became very insecure about it. And I did everything I could to try to change it. And it wasn't until I met this amazing speech coach as an actor, just because I wanted to learn how to do other dialects and things like that, that she made me feel so secure about where I came from. And she was like, that's who you are. That's a part of your culture. That's what makes you so uniquely Amanda, that you don't change it. You just tweak it. And you gotta also remember that growing up in New York, you have all these different languages. And so we're gonna pick up other dialects and other pronunciations from people that came from Ireland and Mexico and Russia and all these places. So of course it happens. So that was one of the things that pointed out to me that took a long time for me to recognize. It took a couple of years. It took quite a couple of years for me to recognize and work on it and feel confident, but also be confident in talking in places like this in public, where if I said something that sounded very New York, I wouldn't make a big deal about it. I'd be like, yep, that's my New York coming out. There you go. That's where I'm from. Yeah.
Love that. And thank you for sharing that. And that's what's so beautiful about sharing our stories, because that's never something that would come up for me. And I do think I speak in a funny way. I mean, there was a few times when I was younger where a couple people said, you sound really stupid when you talk. But yeah, genuinely, like my ex-fiance and this woman that was my boss that hated herself and was mean to everybody. And you have to like look at the source. And I don't wish ill upon them, but my ex-fiance at the time was trying to uphold this perfect family or something. And I was just speaking on real life situations and just talking about reality. And I was just very relatable and still am. And then, like I said, the other person, she was just very unhappy and actually apologized way later, So, but that followed me a little bit. But what I would say, what I was thinking of, and you also brought up the subconscious, and it's really important to be able to identify that you're doing it, which we're going to get a little bit more into how to do that. But we always talk about having awareness and checking in with your life. Am I where I want to be? Am I happy where I'm at? Do I want to make changes? And if things aren't really looking the way you want them to, it's not because it's impossible. It's because something just needs shifted or adjusted a little bit. And it always starts with you. So I just had to ask myself, why do I keep seeing these patterns? So even now, this week has been a little rough for me, or even we'll go with last week. I was in London and I was a little nervous. I don't take time off. I always feel like we're on a hamster wheel, and I'm the biggest advocate for resting, because it's the hardest thing for me. And I know how important it is. And I don't want other people to feel the way that I do, the way I can hit burnout. I don't want that for others, because it doesn't help anyone. And the whole time in the back of my mind, I'm in London. I'm like, oh God, like I'm missing a whole week of work. And what opportunities are going to come in. And you know why? Because when I started 15 years ago, you had to really be on it. You really had to be hitting the pavement. Like no one knew I existed. I wasn't really well known as a model, like in the industry. I wasn't being referred by other clients yet, like I am now. And even though now, 15 years later, I don't even have to try. I don't even go to model castings as often, for fit modeling especially. Oh, you need a fit model? I know Janelle, and they'll just send me. I don't have to audition anymore for modeling. Not there with acting yet. But I notice how even now, even though I've put in the time and the facts are there showing me that the work is consistent, I'm still like, oh, I can't take a break, and I have to, what's going to happen? And I booked a job this week, 2 days, from an agency that I don't even work with anymore. And they just hit me up because they thought of me. And it really woke me up to being like, I'm trying to wave at people and my phone is being difficult. It really, hello and welcome. It really woke me up to that. I was like, whoa, dude, like, look, you're living so far in the past. You're literally living 15 years in the past, the survival mode. I can't take a break because I won't have a job. And that goes even deeper to my childhood and not having any money and what that did to us. So when I'm talking about surviving versus thriving, you can thrive. You have to believe it's possible, but you have to catch your patterns of survival before you can get to the thriving thing, because your body will not believe that you can thrive until you catch that pattern. And of course, the good things will seep in, but your life can be what you really want it to be. So, Amanda, this is a big topic. What advice would you give people to catch those patterns? So let's talk about catching the holding pattern, and then we'll talk about what to do with that. But like, let's zoom in on how to like catch yourself.
Sure. So, as a coach that works with inner voice and self authenticity, it's that inner dialogue that's happening. When scenarios are coming up where it's a quote unquote good opportunity or opportunity of growth, something new is being presented to you that may get you to the next level. And then there's that inner voice or that inner reaction, because we react to things naturally, our body's going to react to things, right? And that may be in being in a loving relationship. If you grew up in a very chaotic, abusive relationship when you were younger, it may feel very uncomfortable to be in a loving, supportive, calm relationship. You're like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. It's so not real. Right. And so that's a pattern. So finding a scenario where you're in a state of hyperactive fear, anxiety, stress, to the point that it makes you feel uncomfortable, that you feel like you have to escape. When you feel like you have to escape, recognize what's happening in the scenario, in the situation. If you're wanting to run away, and not run away like, oh, I don't need to be in the situation because I don't feel I'm being seen or heard. I'm talking about like fear of being hurt. And that could be physically, emotionally, mentally, whatever it is. Then that's something that you have to tap into, especially if it's not a scenario, especially if it's like, for example, I'm talking in front of a crowd. And when I was still living in that inner doubt, it would make me want to run away. My palms would get sweaty. I would start shaking, like physically shaking as if I'm having a full-on panic and anxiety attack. My heart would start beating out of my chest, like just beating. And I would be like, okay, I need some water. And we all have that nervousness, but there's a difference between feeling nervous and feeling like the flight or fight kind of scenario. When you feel that active within you, that's when you know there is a limiting belief, there's a block, there's something there that has to be tapped into and healed, because we are in a space where our body's reacting to the past in the present. Like Nell said, our body is a system. And if you taught it or experienced something in order to survive, now it has that mechanism, that system that you created. So whenever a situation comes up that's very similar or just like that, then that mode activates. And whatever you taught your body or you chose to do, it starts to activate within you. And those are warning signs. Those are things that you need to pay attention to. So it could be as simple as, I know people who, and this is a little vulgar, but they have the poops. They have chronic poops. They do. They, in a nervous situation, they literally got to use the bathroom every 5 minutes. Oh, I got to poop, because they're so nervous that their digestive system and all that bowel movement starts to get overactive because they're so nervous. And so those are scenarios that I would say, like, really paying attention to your body and how it's interacting in a situation, especially when you may be in a safe situation. You may be surrounded by friends or at work or just out in nature, whatever it is. So pay attention to the surrounding and how now your body's reacting. I would say that would be my advice, especially that internal dialogue. If you're saying, like, what is your subconscious saying to you? What is that inner voice going? No, don't do it. It's gonna go bad. So don't even try it. Don't do it. Don't do it. Run away. Go away. Like, it's real.
Oh, it is real. I experience it all the time. And it's a great point. And a lot of times I don't even notice that I've been reacting until after the reaction is over. And that kind of sounds funny, but even today I was having kind of a meltdown and upset about something. And I was kind of stuck on this thought that I was having. And when you're in that, which is I would say it's more freeze because there's fight, flight, and freeze. When you're kind of in a spiral, maybe you're pooping yourself, or maybe you're like in a thought pattern where you just can't get past this thing. In the moment, you might not realize that that feels really real to you. It's really important. This thing you're thinking about or what's going to happen, it's very serious. It's fact. It is definitely going to happen. You're going to go up there and do your speech and you're going to fail and it's going to be terrible. It is facts. There's no way that it could be something else. And so I just want people watching, like, don't feel shame if you can't stop that in the moment. It takes practice to be able to stop it. I'm really not good at it yet. I've been getting better, but I'm not good at it yet. But what can really be helpful is after you're having such a reaction, any reaction, I always sit down and get curious and approach it with love and be like, well, why did I need to react that way? Did I need to be that reactive to that thought or situation? Like, okay, I had an audition and it didn't go the way that I wanted the first few times I taped. But I've totally flipped out. Like, well, but why? And so it can be really helpful to just throughout the day notice if you've had these heightened things, and you might not be able to catch it until after. You might have to have a whole moment and then be like, oh, that was a moment. Let me look into it. And so we're about to jump off here, but okay, so we've identified that we have moments to work through that were survival moments. You feel like you're in survival. You're not in the moment anymore. You're like so far in the future or so far in the past. You're really not here. What's going to happen? This is going to happen. It's going to go all these different ways. Life is shitty. Life is bad. Oh my God. Or, oh, this reminds me of the past. Oh, it's going to happen like that again. That's what's going to happen. So this is what's going on. Survival. But you want to get to thriving. And thriving to me is you're calm, you're collected, you're grounded, and the things that you want to happen in your life, you see them and they are already happening, or there's no doubt in your mind that they will happen. And so what you really have to do is, after you've taken note of what sends you, then it's really time to address that. And Amanda knows I'm always a fan of body-based therapy, because we talked about how your body will react before your mind does. Every time. Your body reacts before your mind does. You might not notice it, but your body takes in something and then your mind goes to protect you. That's your ego trying to protect you and come up with stories to keep you safe. And that's why in the post I said, the story you tell yourself is a thing that's holding you back. And Amanda said, don't let somebody, I forget exactly say, you can repeat it, but essentially, the stories people tell you about yourself, don't make that your own. So what I've been doing is I'll just keep note of these various situations where you could say I overreacted with no shame. There was a reason that happened. And I'll go to EMDR therapy, which is a body-based therapy where you really try to go to where you feel it in your body and you actually feel the sensation instead of think about it, and you process it. And I can never completely explain it, because it's one of those things you actually have to go to EMDR or speak with a breathwork teacher, these professional people. But I'm telling you, these things have changed my life, and these are the only things that have helped me move out of survival mode. I am very analytical. I come up with the craziest scenarios, and if I put all of that creative energy into my art, I don't know where I would be. Probably further along. And so before Amanda tells you her advice here, I just want people listening to know there's no shame, but you will constantly be in survival mode until you address it head on. And the way to do that is to really face your shadows, do the shadow work, face your shit. It's not comfortable. You got to get used to being uncomfortable, and not in an unsafe way. It's kind of like you're leveling up like Mario. Okay. It's just like you're never going to get to the next level of the person you want to be until you deal with all of this pain that's kind of like holding you down. And so I will always be a huge advocate of breathwork, EMDR, and body-based therapy. So before we go, Amanda, I would love any advice you have for people regarding that.
Absolutely. So I am a very big person on vocal healing, because I was taught to think a lot and keep everything internalize it. And so when I learned how to vocalize it, even to myself, because I look like I am completely off the rails. If you were at my home, I'm constantly talking to myself. And apparently I do it even when people are around me, because my friend our friend Melissa was like, oh, do you know you talk to yourself throughout the day? I was like, no. She goes, yeah, you do. I was like, ooh, okay, fine. But so I have constant dialogue that I'm talking to, and is why I'm so big on the inner voice is because unbeknownst to yourself, you're doing these habits, right? Whatever that habit may be. And so when you find something that you're in tuned with, it's great to work on it being the strongest part of you, because that's where you start from, and that's what's going to be able to adapt to, that you'll adapt to quicker. And so for me, it's like even recently, I've been having crazy dreams, and I'm like, oh my gosh, dreams about, because I've been hearing so many people's lives are changing, and I was like, okay, this is a life and moment where everyone's changing. And so I've been having crazy dreams, and I'm like, oh my gosh, am I dreaming out of jealousy for other people's success and joy? Because it was weird scenarios that were coming up, and I'm like, oh my goodness, like people getting married and traveling. I was like, I'm great, I'm happy for them. So what is it that I'm having these dreams about fear or watching them from afar, and I'm struggling to go upstairs? Very vivid dreams. And so when I woke up, and they say like the minute you wake up, you're supposed to do your the most thinking, because your brain is in like the beta or alpha. Don't quote me on this. To the scientific research, I don't. It's all there. But those are the critical moments of the minute you wake up, because your brain is still teetering between that subconscious and dream state, as well as like a waking up. And so you're the most adapted and connected. And so I had to ask myself, where did this dream come from, and what is it trying to show me and teach me? Is it actually jealousy? And it's in my subconscious, and I said, no. It came from the idea that you're seeing everybody do things, and it came down to like, what are you doing? What are you doing for your career? And so, and I am doing many different things. Of course, Nell knows, and if you know me, I'm always doing something. But it's like, is this something serving my goodness, my greatness? Is it serving the gifts that I'm supposed to be living and presenting to the world? Because if it's ego-based decisions and actions that I'm doing, then I'm doing myself a disservice, because it's not coming from my truth. And so it just made me analyze that, and I go, oh, so it's really not jealousy, because I'm not really a jealous person, but it may feel that way. And that's when you have to tap in and go and ask the questions. And you have to sometimes ask yourself the question 3, 4, 5, 7, 8 times in different ways. Seriously. But don't ask it too much to the point that it consumes your mind throughout the day, and you're like, oh my gosh, there's something wrong with me. And just like, there's too much. Just take a moment, take 10, 15 minutes, and that could be meditation, that could be journaling, talking to someone that you trust, like myself or Janelle as a coach. It could be a therapist, or a psychologist, whoever you want to talk to, that's going to give you a third perspective, an outside perspective, so you can see the whole and look at the things as a matter of fact, not from the emotional fear, flight, fawn, fight based, right? Because we all are we all trying to survive, of course. But how are you choosing to survive? Are you choosing to survive? Because there's a big difference of choosing to survive and choosing to live. Because some people just existing around here, and they have no like handle on the bike or the car or where they're going on the journey. They're just letting the journey take them. And that could be good or bad, but if you're in a journey where like, I'm just gonna, whatever, life it is what it is, and I got no control, then everything that's gonna happen to you, you're going to feel like it's always against you, not for you. But when you make and create a intention or a conscious decision to go, I am going to choose to live, and I am going to choose to live in the joy, and choose to live in my gifts, and choose to be aware that there are things that I have to constantly work on. There are things that are going to come up, because what happens is, like Nell said, like in Mario, you're going to level up, right? And in order to level up, you have to recognize where your level was. If your level was 2 and you got to get to 3, what was level 2 all about? Because that's what's happening right now. You're getting ready to go to level 3, and all the things that were affecting you on level 2 are starting to come up. Your body's trying to go back, because that was a comfort zone. And so you're like, what's coming up for me? Is it discomfort? What is it? Fear? Is it doubt? What was in level 2? And what did I learn? And now how can I take that to level 3? And what didn't I get that I can now jump into level 3 and go, okay, now I think I'm able to handle this, or look at it from a different perspective. I learned this. I was aware that, I definitely get angry when someone talks about my voice. Is it defensive? Is it because I'm trying to protect myself? And so those are the things that you have to be aware of. Like, where are my reactions coming from? Are they loved based? Or are they coming from the flight, fight, or fawn, or freeze based? That's when you got to start paying attention to your habits, your blocks, your limiting beliefs, your inner voice, and how it is driving your actions in life and interactions with yourself and others. And thank you, Erica. We love you too, girl. We love you too. And so that's where it comes from. And there, again, many different scenarios. Not one thing is going to work for a person, and it may take a while. It's going to take a while because you're trying to break an old habit.
Mm-hmm.
You know how you say you can't train an old dog new tricks? Yes, you can. You just got to break those old tricks first, the old, habits. So in order to do that, you got to be aware of it, acknowledge it, and take responsibility that I had those old habits, and now I want new ones because I want to change. You got to want to change. You got to want it, and just the mere thought of wanting to change, you can.
Yes, I love all that, and we get comfortable in our pain, which sounds funny, but it's true. All of us, I know, are guilty of that, because even if you're uncomfortable, like, it's like, oh, why they stay in that relationship, they job they don't like, all these things. It's a chemical thing. You literally are chemically attached to that. That's why they talk about trauma bonding and all these things, because everyone on the outside that isn't in it, isn't connected, isn't like weaved into this crazy scenario. They can't understand why a person wouldn't just like jump out, but we all have our own version of that. And that's survival. Well, I know I can survive this. I know I'm comfortable in this pain. And so I'm going to stay here. And it can be very scary. And for me, I can end up like on a hamster wheel. Like, I'll just go into overdrive where I see a problem. And then if the thing doesn't shift or change for a while, my thing, because I'm a fight, we go fight, flight, freeze. I don't freeze. I go fight. And I'll just be like, going on and on about like, it needs to change, it needs to change, it needs to change, it needs to change, because that's a fear. Like, that's how I deal with it. And there have been many times where I haven't had a voice, even if I'm the loudest person in the room. And so, as I'm pretty loud. And so in those moments where I'm being loud and trying to be heard, when I notice the change isn't happening because it doesn't seem like anything else will work, those are the moments where you do pause. And you're like, oh, look, I'm just surviving here. Look at this. This isn't thriving. Like Amanda's talking about, is it coming from love or is it coming from fear? Because thriving is love. 100%. Yep. Survival is fear. And we want you all to thrive, and it's out there for you. But, and it's annoying because you're like, well, why do I keep doing this? Why do I keep staying in this cycle? You have to address the fears head on before you can move out of survival into thriving. It's really, Amanda and I both studied psychology, and we love it. It's both painful and fascinating, right? Because you want to get to a certain level in life, and you can see yourself there, but then you're like, I got to do what? And I got to do this.
Yeah.
And I'm doing this because of this. And it's interesting. I'm even in a situation now where this person and I, we're both in survival mode, and we're doing the same thing, but in a different way, which is weird. So actually, nobody's winning, because actually one person that's doing something, it looks like it's more beneficial for them, and it's not as beneficial for me, but it's actually hurting us both the same. And it just looks different. And so you have to look, like, survival doesn't always look the same. Me, I'm usually screaming and running for the hills. That's what my survival looks like. But some people, and that's why you got to check up on people, they're very quiet. They go into freeze mode. They don't talk about what's going on with them. Yeah. And so I also want to encourage everybody to really check on each other, check on that strong friend, check on that person that seems okay, because we all have things going on. And like Amanda said, she used to have to keep everything in instead of say it out loud. And that could be very damaging for people. And then you start comparing, well, they're going through a lot and I have no right. You're a human. We all have things. Something may be easy for you is hard for someone else, and vice versa. And so we want you to change the story. We want you to, it's like, oh, life has to be hard and I have to work so hard to get, that's my story. I have to get to where I got to fight to get to where I belong. Everyone's else like, you can just relax. I'm like, no, I can't relax. But that's the story I tell myself. And so for all of you watching, I hope you can really identify the false story you're telling yourself, because Amanda knows, I know, everybody knows, you can relax and still get to where you want to be. There is a balance. So what are your thoughts about this episode?
Drop it in the comments and let us know what you want to dive into next.
Subscribe, like, share, and click the link below to book a free consultation. And
We'll see you next time.